You started a business, but it didn't take off the way that you hoped, so now you're thinking about launching another one. But if you didn't have the focus and processes in place to take that first business to the goal line, does it really make sense to start another one? On this episode of Founders Growth, I get to sit down with Nicholas Kirchner. Nicholas is the founder of Hydra, which is a consulting firm for agencies, and Howl, which is a portable fire pit brand made right here in the United States. Nicholas has built and scaled teams, he's learned how to delegate by letting go of his identity, and has figured out how to run two businesses without losing his mind. Here's what we cover in the episode: why your team size should be a reflection of what you want and not what looks impressive, the delegation identity trap, and the surprisingly simple Loom and AI method that finally let Nicholas delegate some of the hard tasks, and how to vet advice, opportunities, and partnerships so you stop chasing the wrong things. Most founders believe that the biggest challenge is getting more clients, but Nicholas says that that's never the real constraint. If you're building a business around optics instead of intention, or if you're holding on to tasks that should have been delegated a long time ago, you're building something unsustainable. And if that feels familiar, this episode is for you. Welcome to another episode of Founders Growth. My name is John Hill, aka Small Mountain. I'm the founder of Adapted Growth, and today on the show we have Nicholas Kirchner. Nicholas is the founder of two companies. One of them is Hydra, which is a consulting firm that works with companies in the B2B space, and he's also the founder of Howl, which is a portable propane fire pit company. Running one business is difficult. Running multiple businesses and allocating the right amount of focus and effort into those things is something that trips up a lot of founders, myself included. So we're going to be diving into his path and his history and how he juggles both of these things and keeps them moving forward. So, Nicholas, before we kind of hop in here, can you take a second and talk about who Hydra works with specifically in the consulting side?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, first off, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. Excited to chat with you. Yeah, on the Hydra side, we're about 4 years old, and throughout our time, we've basically positioned ourselves to just working with agencies, some B2B businesses, your accounting firms, things like that, but primarily agencies. And largely due to the fact that that's my background is owning and operating ad agencies or digital marketing agencies. So,
Mhm.
uh, same with my partner. So we kind of came together and decided to package what we knew into a market that needs it.
Interesting. So, let's just dive into this, right? Because I love agencies, right? Like, I think that they're very, very cool. I know there's about a bajillion different levels of, functionality and ability to deliver results. So when you're working with an agency, like, what's their most common friction point or struggle point?
Yeah. Most agencies that we work with and that I see, getting clients is always like the biggest issue in everyone's head, right? How
Hmm.
do I position myself and attract people that actually want to work with me? And more often than not, that might not be the constraint, but it's everyone's perceived constraint as to why they can't grow. So I would say client acquisition. And then second to that would be scaling their team. Who do I
Hmm.
need? When do I need them? How do I, as the founder, actually get out of doing the work and into leading and growing a business?
Such a perfect kind of setup for my next question, right? Because we did the pre-call, and you brought up two very interesting points, right? One of the things you talked about was having 42 people under you, right? When you're working with people now, like, what did you learn from having a team that big, and how does it relate to how you coach agencies and help them grow their teams now?
Yeah. I think now I always start with where do we want to be 12, 24, 36 months out from now? Because your team structure and the company you build is ultimately and should be a reflection of what you want out of your
Mhm.
business, right? And my perspective has probably changed on this as a founder over time. And it's less about serving the business versus building a business that serves you and what you actually want for your life. Because a lot of people think I want a huge team, I want big revenue numbers, mostly for the optics that gives you in the
Mhm.
marketplace, right? But if you really peel it back and say, do I actually want any of that? Or do I just want a business that, spits off a good amount of cash and I can have good time freedom and that kind of thing? Those are two very different paths, and I help founders do both of those things. I have, agencies I work with that are 50 person, 75 person going on 100 people.
Mhm.
And I have agencies that are 3 to 4 people using AI super heavily. And hey, we're going to be a small shop and super high margins. And, we want to live a cool life. We want to go play golf middle of the week. And, that's their version of success. So it really comes down to what you individually want and building around that.
I liked how you talked about that people are doing it for the optics of it, right? Because there's so much on this path of being a founder that we can do for the wrong reasons, right? Um, how does someone know if they're if how I don't know how to ask this question the right way without like leading the witness, but like how does someone know that that drive to build a big team isn't just for optics, isn't just for status. It's like it's really aligned with the business and how they should be building it.
Yeah, so let's take an example of someone who might want to build a big team, right? If I want to sell an agency for $100 million someday, right?
Mhm,
I'm going to need to get to a certain size of team to support $100 million in revenue. That lends itself to hundreds of people. And so if I know in the beginning, hey, I have an acquisition target or an exit number that I want to get to, the only way I'm going to be able to get there is a function of really talented people and a lot of them. Okay.
mhm,
That is kind of how I look at it versus, oh, I just want to have a big team because I want to be able to lead a bunch of people and, have the idea that we got something big going on. It's
mhm.
mostly because there's no other way to get to the dollar outcome that you're looking for,
Okay.
in my opinion.
That's awesome. I love that, right? But, it's still kind of one of those things, and I think you and I can, look at this maybe differently than a new founder does, right? Because once you have been doing this for a while and you go through some stuff, you learn interesting things along the way. So the thinking is it's based around like the end goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly. Because on the flip side, if
Mhm.
someone just wants a business that nets me $1 million in profit per year, well, you could arguably with AI now do that yourself on the extreme case,
Mhm.
or that might only be 3 to 5 people. So it really, once again, comes back to what you want, and then that determines the mechanics and the needs of how we get there.
Interesting. Okay. When when you're consulting on the agency side specifically, right? Is the standard advice to kind of like pick a lane and go super deep? Is it try to be full cycle, or I'm sorry, full service, so that way you can help more people? Where do people kind of get mixed up on that path? Because I see people talking about different lanes, right? I see a lot of people talking about you want to niche down, you want to be very specific, but then I also, think that there's some value in starting as more of a generalist and then kind of finding your way just by doing. How do you think about that, talk about that with your clients, especially after going through it
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah. So the path that I took initially is, that 0 to 20K a month range, like validating that, hey, we can actually start something and get it off the ground.
Mhm,
I was more of that generalist type. And a lot of agencies that I start talking to around that point are in a similar lane. And so establishing positioning early on is a key focus, right? Because it really determines everything else that we do, from getting new clients to how we're going to price our work to what our offer is to standardizing delivery, what hires we need to make, what experience they need to have. So I'm a fan of experimenting in the beginning. Figure out who you like working with and who you don't like working with, because there's a wide range of client types out there, business
mhm.
sizes, verticals that you like, things that interest you, things that are really boring to you. And I think that matters, right? Because that ultimately determines how hard you want to work on something. And for a lot of people, getting them to want to work on the thing is just as important as what they are working on, from my experience, especially with early stage entrepreneurs, right?
Interesting.
Um, because you have less of that muscle built of like, oh, if I do this thing that I might not necessarily like, that's going to get me the outcome I want,
Mhm,
right? That willpower isn't always established in the beginning.
mhm.
Whereas if you've done it a few times, you're like, hey, I'm going to I'm going to get through this season, but I know it's going to end up being what I want. But anyway, to bring it full circle back to your question, I like agencies that are positioned toward one vertical or one industry because the efficiency you gain from that is pretty remarkable. From
Hmm.
client acquisition, I talk to one avatar with one set of problems, and I know the solution to those problems, um, and it makes client acquisition much easier. On the flip side, it makes fulfillment much easier because I'm taking someone from A to B and I've
Hmm.
productized out how to get from A to B. So there's no variability. There's no like one off situations that I have to tell the team about. It's, hey, we have a new client, standard process gets executed.
That makes sense. Okay. Um, one of the things we were talking about on the pre-call was growing the team, right? And specifically, you talked about this thing that I just find fascinating, right? When you're the doer, right, and you're just used to doing, right, and lots of founders, start out scrappy, right? They're doing everything, um, and the difficulty of really delegating well.
Yeah.
What have you learned on your path as a founder about being a better delegator, not holding on to work, not gatekeeping on work? How have you improved in that lane?
Yeah. I think this comes down to almost as much an identity thing as it
Oh,
does a like just practice of actually delegating something. And what I mean by that is early on, you derive a lot of the value, a lot of the initial growth of your business off the back of what you know and what you do, right?
hmm,
You're the one hearing from clients, having them edify your work. You're the one in the marketplace with the reputation. And you kind of get attached to, oh, like, I feel smart and I'm building this thing. And so in those early stages, that feels good. At a certain point, I find this is around maybe $500,000 a year at the absolute maximum. You really can't do anything more yourself. You have to bring other people into the fold. And to me, the way that I delegate is in order of leverage within the business, right? So my admin tasks might be some of the first things that I delegate because that's the lowest dollar per hour work that I could possibly be doing. All the way on the other end of the spectrum, it's deal making, it's, potential acquisitions of businesses, it's sales, it's marketing, right? It's
hmm,
the actual growth of the business. Um, so there's kind of this scale that you walk through of what you're going to delegate first. And the best way that I can tell someone how to do this is simply record yourself doing every single thing you do throughout your day in a Loom video. And then, I mean, it's gotten so much easier to do this over the last 12
yeah,
months, but just feeding it to, Claude, for example, or whenever you're watching this, whatever the premier LLM is, because it changes weekly,
hmm,
um, feeding it to that and saying, hey, build me an SOP, build me the quality assurance checklist to do exactly what I did in this video perfectly every time, right?
hmm,
And at the most foundational layer, that's the easiest way to do it. And then you can make the decision of, do I need a person to do it? Or nowadays, do I need an agent that can do it? But it all starts with documenting that process. And once you're able to do that and you actually have a repeatable way of getting a result or doing the thing, you got to let go of the identity in saying, this no longer serves the business for me to hang on to this task because there's something or someone better than me that can do it more efficiently and is going to have more focus on it. And then you have to go find the new thing that's going to allow you to drive value for the business. And that's constantly changing
hmm.
as you progress through different revenue thresholds.
Because you run two businesses, and we were talking about this before we turned on record. Every founder I know has had, and myself included, right? We've done the thing to where it's going okay, and then we get shiny object syndrome, or maybe someone comes along and it's just too cool of a partnership thing, and then it's like, well, I'm smart. I can run multiple things at the same time.
Mhm.
What have you what have you struggled with by running both these businesses at the same time? Like, what have you figured out about how you allocate time and effort? And are they different enough that it's easy to kind of think about them as separate? Is there a lot of overlap in how you think about the businesses? Like this is a big, huge question, but
Sure.
when should someone be open to the idea of launching something else? And any other tips or tricks about how to manage multiple things at the same time?
Yeah. So I think for me, and that's really all I can answer for, is once you understand what you're good at and what role you play in a business,
Hmm.
you can decide and allocate your time much more efficiently. What am I good at? I'm good at selling things to people on the internet, whatever that thing is. So I know my lane extremely well. Now, do I have my hands in things across both businesses, across every department? To some degree, yes, right? Because I have
Hmm.
input there as a founder and as an entrepreneur. But as far as your day to day goes, you have to know where you drive value. And then just relentlessly focus on the constraints within that area, right? And the second piece of this is good partners. Okay. I could not do what I do and have two businesses if I didn't have exceptional partners on both sides that were really good at other lanes of the business. I think where founders get things wrong is they want to start all these things and they want to be at the center and control everything of every entity that they have their hands in.
Hmm.
It's really just not possible. Please hit me up if you found a way. But to me, it's really not possible to do that well and own the entirety of multiple companies. If you look at the extreme example of this, Elon Musk, who runs all these different businesses at insanely high levels, what you'll notice about him and how he spends his time is he just goes and attacks the main constraint that's holding the business back. If it's manufacturing, okay, great. I'm a manufacturing expert this month. If it's, sales and marketing, great. I'm a sales and marketing expert this month. And you'll notice incredibly talented people around him, partners, C suite, whatever, that own those lanes. But I'm just playing the role that I need to play. And I think that would be my main tip for anybody is understanding what you're good at and how you add value is paramount to ever doing multiple things at the same time.
So I love this, right? Because this is one of these things to where we get to kind of dive in maybe a little bit deeper. How does someone know that they're actually good at something and not just holding on to it because they're, a control freak or uh too too well meaning for their own good?
Sure. I think it comes down to your results, right? Like if
Okay.
you're going to say, "Hey, I'm good at marketing," but you have no clients, no customers, you're not where you want to be with your revenue,
Hmm.
then you probably have some room to run on marketing, right? You probably have some room to learn. If you think you're incredible at fulfilling the work or delivering the product, okay, who's telling you that? What data do you have to support it? Do you have NPS scores that tell you this is the best thing I've ever used? Do you get an insane amount of referrals from the work that you do? Are you always meeting or exceeding, whatever production targets, correlate to your projections for the year? Like I'm a big person, or I'm a big proponent of validating whatever thoughts and feelings you have with actual data.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes it's a painful reconciliation to do
Hmm.
because you don't want to think that you're not as good as you think you are at something, right? That
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance hurts and it sucks. And as humans, we don't like that.
Hmm.
So if you can look at that and then match your thoughts and feelings toward what you think you're good at, that probably is the best clue I could give somebody.
Interesting. Okay. Changing gears just a little bit. One of the things you talked about that I would like to just kind of dive into is you said selecting the right opportunities is something that you struggled with, earlier on your path, but you're better at it, right? And you said specifically uh, to not just want the thing, but to like want the right thing, whether that's the right business or the right partner. How have you gotten better at selecting the right opportunities and avoiding the time wasters?
For sure. I think going back to partners first,
Mm,
if an opportunity is brought to you, Is this someone that you can see yourself working with long term? Do they align with you from a value standpoint? I think that's highly underrated. Do
Mhm.
they align with you from an outcome perspective, what you guys both want? Does it align with involvement expectations, how much, time and energy and investment or capital you're going to be putting into this thing? That's very important. Number two, is this an industry or an opportunity that is growing, right? Or is this something that is
Hmm.
kind of going away or not yet validated? I think if you're a first time entrepreneur, it is so much better to select an opportunity that has worked and go out execute and outwork the current players in the space. There
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, no reason to go try some crazy new idea as your first business because it's incredibly hard to do versus modeling some existing form of success. So,
That's a huge tip, right? Like for a long time, I had this weird association that you weren't really an entrepreneur unless you were building something software driven, like Mark Zuckerberg. Like everyone else was not really a real entrepreneur. And so, like, very much a very limiting perspective on it, right? Because no one really is excited to be the first guinea pig, So if you go off too far off and launch something new, you know, people don't even have the proper education to make the right decision, right? There might not be line items if you're going more of a corporate, kind of B2B route with it and stuff like that. But it's super easy to like put yourself under that kind of pressure of like, well, we got to go do something completely new because and you hit the nail on the head, right? If your identity is around you want to be some sort of visionary entrepreneur, it can be super easy to go ranging off in the realm of like, well, let's go find something that no one's ever done before so we can actually feel new. I
right.
love the idea of starting with something that already exists and, trying to just make an improvement off of what's there.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at most major businesses, it's never really the first player of anything that ends up with the market share.
Yeah.
They have their initial spike and hype, and then they fall off, and then competitors come in and they improve on the mistakes of the first.
Hmm.
And so, honestly, I'm happy to be number 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, maybe not 100,
Hmm.
but I like markets where there's validation. And honestly, it's a good proof point if you have a good amount of competitors coming in. Because what does that prove? It proves that there's demand for what you
Hmm.
actually are doing. There's product market fit there. So, in some ways, I think it's the smarter path. It's less sexy, but your odds of success increase, in my opinion.
Interesting. Being on both sides of this, right? Being on the marketing side through the consulting group, but then also having the brand. Does
Mhm.
that create any cool opportunities to work on the skill set as a marketer still?
It definitely does, right? And I'll give you from both perspectives.
Please.
From the brand side, okay, I'm attending a lot of conferences that are marketing driven. Well,
Mhm,
who is there? Agencies are there. What are they sharing? All the things that are working across their clients. Even in my individual consulting sessions, I get a behind the curtain view of all the tactics and strategies that are growing other direct to consumer brands, right? Because I work with a lot of direct to consumer agencies. So not only can I apply that over to the D2C brand side, which is immensely valuable,
mhm,
but from the agency or the consulting side, I also am the ideal client for a lot of these people.
mhm,
So I can tell you what they care about, what they look at, what's the internal dialogue at a brand and what are we concerned about, right? What are the angles that would appeal to someone like me to hire you to do my marketing or to assist with a piece of the puzzle. So there's a lot of cool synergy in that way where I get to see both sides of the coin.
yeah.
And yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover in that way.
One of the things that I think is really interesting is, sometimes you can see the things that, on LinkedIn, you'll see someone showing up with like a hot take about how to run their marketing. And sometimes, y- at least me, I'm reading it and I'm like, you know what? I know you're an outside consultant because there's no way if you were actually like in a brand you would want to run with this idea, right?
Right.
So I'm curious, what is the biggest shift you have had in marketing and how you think about it, how you go about it, that you've been able to glean from like actually running a brand and not just being on the outside as a consultant or agency?
Yeah. There's some things that you're only going to understand when you are operating, right?
Hmm.
Like agencies tend to look at things from how do I sell the most amount of stuff in the shortest amount of time to show the best result.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's things internally at a brand that, are less controllable or will bottleneck that. Like in our case, right? Like inventory, big
Mm.
constraint around our side because we manufacture everything in house. So sometimes selling more of something actually does more harm than good to our P&L. Over time, of course, we want to sell as much product as possible,
Hmm.
but understanding kind of the seasons and how that impacts your cash flow and understanding when is the right moment to capitalize on an opportunity versus it's gas pedal all the way down all the time, no matter what. And so that is an interesting kind of distinction. The second thing is blanket recommendations. All right. I'm big on this when it comes to consulting. I'm big on this when it comes to agencies telling companies what to do or kind of that more
Hmm.
thought leadership side. I think there's somewhat of a epidemic with business advice of blindly applying things you hear to your company. The
Hmm.
reality is there is an infinite number of variables that are not similar to whoever is talking. Even as I'm with you on this podcast, I'm trying to give, very broad strokes and principles that, maybe you can apply, but you have to vet out whether that's actually the right thing for you or not, right?
Yeah.
Because not every channel is going to work for you based on the
100%.
business, based on your price point, based on your avatar. And so you really have to do your own diligence and your own testing to figure out, is this signal or is this noise?
Oh yeah.
Oftentimes, most businesses are better off doing what they already do, what's already working, and doing 10 times more of it and absolutely maxing that out before experimenting with anything new. Now, for an entrepreneur, that's really boring, but boring typically, from my experience, has the best end outcome, right?
Yeah. Man.
Because there's a big, big difference from being an 8 out of 10 at something and a 10 out of 10. And that
Oh
last
yeah.
2 out of 10 might take 10 years to master and figure out. But the
100%.
the gap there cannot be understated.
Oh man. Like I mean, the difference between being okay at something and being great at something is like much bigger than I think most people are kind of thinking about, right?
Yeah,
And I love that thing that you talked about it not being fun for most entrepreneurs because I got to tell everybody eventually I think, and I'm curious to your thoughts on this, when we get into this thing and we become these idea engines, right? Because that's a big part of this thing, right? Having ideas and testing them out and everything. I think there's a season of that, and then I started to get tired of having ideas, right? Like I don't even want to come up with another business idea, kind of mode, because I just know how easy it is for me to pull my focus away from these things.
right.
But I tell everybody that a business is just like a set of activities done consistently that we know what the output is going to happen more
Right.
often than not. And that's just a job,
Yeah.
and don't build a business that you hate because you think it's going to be someone else's problem. Like, you're still going to have to play a part in this thing.
Absolutely.
When going back to that idea of like taking advice that's like for you and everything, how does someone know if the people that they're following are giving them good advice or not? Like what's your vetting process if you have one to figure out, okay, like what this person is saying in their content makes sense. Let me go try it versus, okay, this makes sense for them, but I'm not running that kind of business. How can someone get better at that?
Yeah, I think when it comes down to taking advice, it's, do they already have what you want in
Hmm.
this area that you're taking advice? And this could be life advice, could be relationship, could be business, could be whatever. Do
Hmm.
they have the outcome that you actually want? That's number one. Number two, have they done it in a similar business to what I'm doing, right? Are they
Mm,
speaking in the context of my business, or is it a different business type entirely? The highest signal is where they've done the exact thing that I want to do, they've achieved the end outcome, and they're still doing it to me, right?
mhm.
Because things change quickly. And so if they've done something in the past, but they're not actively doing it, well, who knows? That might be outdated or, now out of context advice. So I really think they have to pass those filters for me to really take it seriously. Or, that's not to say I won't listen to someone and be like, is there a nugget I can apply?
Mhm.
But overall, that criteria really needs to be true for me to be like, oh, maybe I'm off on this and I should
Yeah.
try it their way instead. But you have to also decipher everyone making content is trying to get attention and
Yes.
sound smart.
Mhm.
So with that, their incentive is to say things that are going to get the most reaction or maybe be a very polarizing idea.
Mhm.
But a stronger indicator for me is also watching what people do. So a lot of people who give advice in opposition to what you actually see them practice. And so I'm much more in the camp of let me watch what this person actually does and how they execute versus what they're saying to execute.
Mm.
And oftentimes you'll find that to be very different.
Interesting. Okay. Switching gears because I'm fascinated by people that make hard products and widgets, right? Like, I mean, my business is very consultant driven. It's lots of ideas and frameworks and everything. Um, so how did you get into portable propane fire pits? Like, was it do you just like being outdoors? Did you just see a market opportunity? Like talk to me about how you decided to kind of go in that direction.
Yeah, no doubt. So, when I moved out to Denver, my partner in Howl actually was a prior client of mine in the agency days, and we
Mm,
decided to come together and try our hand at doing a private equity fund. Long story short, that didn't end up playing out as we wanted it to. So we were like,
oh,
hey, what are we actually good at? Right.
mhm,
And he's really good at product design, product vision, very avid outdoors guy, off-road racing, that kind of thing,
cool.
and saw a gap in the marketplace that he was seeing. And I'm definitely keen on the outdoors, and I like that kind of stuff too. But he really lives and breathes it, and understands all the nuance of what makes a good product versus an inferior product. And so once again, playing my role, understanding the customer acquisition, the marketing side, the growth side, we came together and founded Howl along with two other partners. So um, we all kind of play our role, and that's how we got into it originally. But it was mostly having an inferior experience with
Mhm,
products in the marketplace and challenging what needs to be different for this thing to be world class, and to be better and fundamentally different than what's already here. And that's kind of the idea that we started with.
that's
Also,
cool.
too, the opportunity uh, in propane fire pits specifically. Out west, we have a lot of burn bans, and due to wildfires, you can't actually use a wood fire.
Mhm,
Now, the problem that presents is you have to sacrifice one of the most fundamental pieces of the camping or outdoor experience, being a fire. And
mhm,
so, how do you make a no compromise product where it's as good as the thing that you're missing, but we can fill that gap and you can use it when there's other circumstances like a burn ban in place, things like that. So when you look at all of these trends, circumstances, competitors, everything, you kind of find your position and find what needs to happen, with a high likelihood that it's going to work out. Now, full transparency, in the first 2 years of developing the product, we had no idea whether it's going to work out, and to a lot of times you're not going to have 100% certainty.
mhm.
But yeah, that's kinda the long story of how we
Oh my
got there.
gosh, man. This is such a cool thing. So how man, I think my questions have questions. because you said that you guys manufacture them yourselves. How'd
Yes.
you go about the process of like coming up with the idea, right? Like you said that one of the partners is really good at product and he is the outdoorsy guy anyway. Were these like drawings that he had, or did you guys just kind of more have a basic idea and went and found people that were good at kind of early stage? How did you go through that process of idea to something built that you can sell? I'm
Yeah.
so fascinated by this idea.
Very, very crude and intensive process. I mean, I remember at our old office, we literally had a cardboard box that we cut up, and we're like, okay, this is roughly how big the thing's going to be, roughly how we should be able to carry it, roughly the size, the weight, how we want it to look. And, then you go find an engineer that can help you with this because none of us are engineers.
Yeah.
So a lot of very crude sketching and like overall, here's how we think we're going to get there. And then taking that to an engineer and saying, how can we make this real? Um, and that process took us 2 years. And,
Wow.
I don't remember the exact amount of prototypes, but definitely coming up on probably 10 prototypes
Whoa.
of figuring out the functionality, the design, the physics of it, which is a whole different beast to figure out. But yeah, it's iterative for sure. So
That is
similar to
so
figuring
cool.
out what works on a marketing campaign and
Yeah.
breaking it into its individual parts. What's the constraint in the funnel or whatever? What's the constraint in this product and why we can't make it work how we want it to work? So
What was it like when you guys got the first prototype?
it was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah.
It's not anything close to what ended up being the final form, but I mean, we're
Mhm.
talking like it looks like we went to Home Depot and welded a bunch of individual pipes and parts together and plates of steel. And she wasn't pretty, but it proved that it was a real thing, right? And yeah, so we went out and tested that, and we're like, "Wow, we think this thing actually has legs." Now we have to figure out how to build it at any sort of meaningful scale and actually make money. That's the
Oh,
that's the ridiculously hard part.
interesting. Have you guys th- this is an interesting question. Have you guys had to make any changes to the design or the process based around like productizing and making it easier to produce? Like,
Many times, yeah.
interesting. Do you have any interesting examples top of mind of, something you had to shift just for ease of production?
For sure. Everything down from materials, like what's the raw material we're using for this thing,
Okay.
to meet, how do we make it a lighter weight? Is this cheaper to source? Because I'll add, we build everything here in the USA, so things are extremely
Wow.
expensive.
Yeah.
Sometimes, 5 to 10 times the cost of offshore manufacturing.
Yeah.
So you really have to scrutinize every piece and say, is this required or is this the right thing? And that sometimes impacts your product design choices too. Like if there's a super expensive component, hey, to be able to get to any reasonable margin on this thing and make it a sustainable product we can actually support for people,
Mhm.
what needs to be true? And so, yeah, many times we've
That is
we've done that, and
interesting.
I mean, we still do that all the time. We
Hmm.
have people on staff and engineers on staff that is their whole job is designed for manufacturing, um, and understanding like, hey, this thing's cool, but can we actually make it?
Yeah.
Because those are two different things. Making something cool versus something that you can make thousands of.
Yeah. When so I have a question, right? The only propane tanks that I know of are like the big ones for like propane grills, right? Like
Yeah.
does y'all's stove hook up to one of like those? Or are there other styles and maybe smaller sizes of propane tanks that I'm just not aware of?
Yeah, so I mean, what you're talking about is your standard 20-pound
Hmm.
propane tank. We absolutely use those,
Okay.
and
Interesting.
actually sell those. But also, a lot of people run smaller tanks, 10-pound tanks, which are
Oh.
more conducive to units that don't use as much propane. And that really comes down to burn time and how long you want to be able to stay out there
Hmm.
with a single tank, right? Like 10 pounds, obviously a lot easier to carry, transport takes up less space, but you're not getting the whole, burn time. You're not going to sit there with it for, 8 to 10 hours like you would a 20 pound. So everyone kind of has their own trade offs in the off road community of like what they want to carry and what their setup looks like. And, um,
Interesting.
but yeah.
Going into the conversation about manufacturing, right? And you said that you guys are manufacturing your everything here locally. Was that important to you guys? Did you guys like come together as a team and say like we really want to, build and manufacture here in the United States? Was it just easier to do because you didn't have to travel? Like how'd you guys come to that decision?
Yeah, for sure. I think manufacturing here in the U.S. is really important. I think that's a lot of what made us great over the last century. Is hey, we actually built stuff here, and it was quality, and it lasted forever. The
Mhm.
main thing that we wanted to make sure of is that, you know, A, we're creating meaningful jobs here in the U.S., and B, that we're producing products that you'd actually be happy to hand down to your kids, right? And something
Oh,
that actually
okay.
lasts. So a lot of the design influence, a lot of the influence of how durable we wanted to make things was around, hey, can this thing last decades? And, it can kind of have that cool patina to it almost of like,
Mhm.
hey, this was my father's or my grandfather's or whatever. And so we built them to be absolutely bomb proof. And it's
Very
it's
cool.
really cool, right? And I think there is a certain satisfaction in doing things here, versus just being a sales and marketing business essentially and
Yeah.
sourcing everything overseas.
Hmm.
Is it infinitely harder? Yes.
Like when man, so first of all, I'm a big fan of like buy it for life and buy once, cry once kind of like thinking and stuff like this. So I love whenever anybody is going and trying to make like something that'll last. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's something that our customers have come to know and love as well, and the storytelling around, actually doing that, and it is difficult, and, I think people are willing to pay more, I'm not saying infinitely more, but
Hmm.
more for something that they know is well built
Yeah.
and will
Es-
last, right?
Especially in the outdoor community, right? Like those folks just they need gear that it's gonna work,
Right.
and so, yeah, and but they're always really big into, like, stuff that's gonna last for forever and things like that.
Yeah, and, it's funny, your buy once, cry once is something that our customers say a lot. Like, in our like, on social, etcetera, it's like,
Mhm,
"Wow, that's expensive," but there's a reason that it's expensive, and then once the customer really experiences what that is, they're like,
mhm.
"Ah, it makes sense."
That is awesome. I
Yeah.
love that. You said, something right there, and I would love to kinda dig more into that. You said, "Is it harder to do here?" Absolutely. Like, I mean, other than cost,
Mhm.
like, what else comes to mind as a particular difficulty about trying to manufacture in the US versus offshoring it?
Well, I'll start with, it doesn't help when none of the team, myself included, that was starting this thing knew anything about manufacturing anything.
Mhm,
And so it's also a talent and an expertise thing too, right? Because you have to find people who actually know what they're doing in that category
mhm.
and bring them on as an early stage company. And that's a risk in and of itself is, staffing for that, building a facility for that, um, very capital intensive in that way. And
Mhm.
so, versus, hey, manufacturer, I want 1,000 units of this and put my logo on it and,
Yeah.
I'll reorder when I need you and not have to touch any of that. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you're involved in every single piece of getting raw material to turning it into the end thing. And the amount of variables and delays and issues that can come along with that is, not to be understated. And
Yeah.
when you have a premium product, everything has to be to the right standard. So, there's been so many times where we've gotten parts in that, might not be up to our quality standard from
Mhm.
a given supplier. And you got to send that back. And then, are they going to cover the cost or are you going to cover the cost? And then, you're paying to expedite stuff to make your promises or to meet your promises to your customers. And, you know, those are some of the examples. I could go on forever, but
Interesting.
there's there's a lot to it.
Moving in, so zooming out just a little bit, right? I'm curious, since you have the agency business and you've got this other business, how does your mindset shift when you're working on one business versus the other? Like, uh, do you focus on different KPIs? Do you kind of have to be like, okay, remember, no hard widgets over here. So, do you have to kind of like shift any perspectives or any thinking when you're working on one business versus the other?
Yeah, I mean, to me, both it's interesting, right? Business can be boiled down, in my opinion, to getting customers, keeping them longer, and making them worth more. Okay, so when I look at things through those two lenses, it's very easy to just think about, okay, what are the set of activities I need to do across
Hmm,
both companies for that outcome to be true, right? How do I get customers more efficiently? How can I make them worth more? That guides a lot of your work. Yes, there's KPIs that back all of those things, and focus might shift based on where the constraint is. But that's how I'm able to go in and make maximum impact. Um, is really just clarity on what you're working on and why. Most people I find when they sit down at their desk to start work, they have no idea what they should be doing. They're
yeah.
just doing what might feel productive, what they've heard that they should be doing, checking social media throughout the day, like, "Oh, I'm consuming content," whatever it is. So, I think if you can clearly understand what it is you should do, you will be more productive than you've ever felt in your life. And, those are the principles that I use is like, what do I actually need to get done to move this thing forward? And I just relentlessly focus on that. Everything else doesn't really matter to a big degree.
Epic. So if you're focused on the right levers, they don't really change a whole lot between the two businesses.
No, and also it once again comes down to I'm experienced enough to know exactly what the levers are. And
Uh-huh.
so it's how do I do more of it and how do I do what I'm already doing better?
Interesting.
Going back to doing the same thing at 10 times the volume is often what you need to do. Now, at a certain level of scale, that breaks and you can't do anything more that you've already done. You need to add something new, but it usually becomes pretty obvious in your
Hmm.
data when that actually is true.
Interesting. Okay. Nicholas, this is a cool conversation, my friend. I respect your time, and I probably could talk to you for the next like week and a half around just the campfire business. That is just really cool.
Appreciate it.
But we're going to move into the backside of this thing, and I'm going to ask you some of my repeating questions just to kind of
Cool.
get your take on these ideas. If someone's going to start an agency, what is your number one piece of advice for someone who thinks that that's the lane they want to go down?
Get really good at understanding how to get clients
Okay.
and hire really good practitioners and let them do their thing.
Okay. Now, on the product side,
Mhm.
what's your piece of advice to someone who wants to go explore that realm?
Understand why someone would pick your product over anything else and make sure
Ooh.
that it has a defensible moat. And what I mean by that is, with AI now, with marketing and distribution, everyone can run ads to a good degree. Everyone
Mhm,
can do email marketing to a good degree. Everyone can put out social content to a good degree. So what's really left that people can't touch? It's really product and offer, right? And it can't just be a little bit different, right? There needs to be some sort of an innovation, in my opinion, or you have to have some advantage on distribution that others don't. It's
hmm,
why you see so many influencer led brands do so well. What do they have? An ability to get their customer acquisition cost extremely, extremely low
mhm,
because they already have the distribution in a world where that product might not even survive if it wasn't attached to that name because it might even be an inferior product.
hmm,
So you have to know why it's going to win and why you're
interesting.
going to bet on it and have something defensible, in my opinion.
I love that. Um, I know you're big on LinkedIn, right? I'm curious, what is the business mantra or line or, old folksy wisdom that you can appreciate now, but you had to learn it the hard way?
Um, It's always the most boring one, and everyone says it, but I'm gonna be a broken record because it's true. People are the only real leverage in a business. Um,
Hmm.
Everyone talks about hiring and hiring smart people and getting out of their way, and it's because it works and because it's true. But everyone kind of treats recruiting or treats getting the right people on the bus as almost an afterthought.
Hmm.
And we often think like, well, I could just learn how to do it. Why not just go pay for someone who's already spent 20 years of their life figuring out the best way to do it
Hmm.
and hire them? Like, that's how the best companies scale the fastest. That's why you see Meta offering $100 million compensation packages to AI engineers to come work with them. We're talking the top, thousandth of a percent of talent,
Hmm.
but that's why they do that because they know that's where the leverage is. And so, across anything, you want to go faster, get the right people on the bus, find a way to make it interesting for them.
So, zooming into that just like a little bit, right? I know that because we were talking about SOPs earlier, right? And I
Mhm.
know that everyone, it's fairly, it's almost formulaic, right? That people start off with no SLAs, processes, documentation, right? I think everybody kind of has that season of thinking, well, if I just create really great instructions, I don't have to go hire really great people. I can hire just anybody to go do this thing. And it sounds like what you're saying in that line that we were just talking about is that it makes sense to pay the premium.
Yeah, and it's business dependent on what you can afford and who you can attract and what you're willing to give up.
Hmm.
Because you're not going to get exceptional people for nothing.
Yeah.
But I always relate the level of systemization you need to scale your business is dependent on the level of talent that you have. Um, Nothing against anyone working, service or like fast food, but I want you to think about something for a second.
Hmm.
Someone who goes to work at McDonald's or Starbucks, every menu item has a playbook on how to make it and how to deliver it.
Hmm.
Why? Because typically the people who hold those jobs do not have subject matter expertise in any given thing. I need to be able to pull somebody pretty much off the street and get them to produce a consistent end product.
Hmm.
So my systems have to be dialed perfect, like no room for error, right? On the flip side, if I have someone I'm paying $300,000, $500,000 a year to, they're probably going to look at my process and be like, this sucks. I know how to do it 10 times better than you.
Hmm.
And it's wrong here, here, and here. So I might not even have a process for them. I'm delegating an outcome that I want. I'm saying, hey, here's the KPI we need to hit. Find a way to go do it. And that's where the senior talent, the best talent really shines because they're able to look at an objective and see the path, even if you don't know what it is. And that's why you pay a premium. So they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. The lower paid people, the lower skilled labor that you have, the more processes you need, the more exceptional your talent, the less processes you need because all of those things are already built into how they operate.
So, okay, I love this idea. Um, and I'm just kind of like thinking it through. Like, how does someone uh I can see a lot of people making the mistake of being like, well, you know what? I've got great people, so I probably don't need processes, right? And
Mhm.
just like continuing to kind of thrive in limbo and kind of like languishing and stuff like that. Any tips or ideas or knowledge of like not trying to sell yourself on that your team is at a level than they or higher than they actually are?
Yeah. I mean, if you have truly great people, if you ask yourself, this is my favorite litmus test of whether someone should stay or go, by the way.
Okay.
If I had the option to rehire them, knowing what I know today, would I do it?
Mm,
And a lot of times the answer is going to be no. And they should probably be replaced, but most people keep people too long because it's uncomfortable.
mhm,
Um, so that's one piece of the equation. The second thing is data. And once again, I'm big on this. Like, if I say I have exceptional people, but we're losing half the business that we bring in every 6 months, well, they're probably not that good.
mhm,
In fact, I can tell you conclusively they're not good. So over time, you develop benchmarks on what good looks like. Like, for example, I know if an agency is churning more than 7 to 10% of their revenue monthly at a maximum, we have fulfillment problems. We have issues of clients not
Yep.
getting the end result that they came in for in the time they thought it was going to take. So I can pretty conclusively say that that's the constraint and that it's our people that we need to look at. Any
Huh.
problem in your business is always a people problem or a process problem, one of the two.
I Yeah, I can't think of a problem that would fall into any bucket outside of those two, right?
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Because if you have the right process, you can plug any person in to do it, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. Um, you've been in the space for a while, Nicholas, right? And things are shifting rapidly, and you hit this on the head of whichever week this comes out, there'll be a new AI tool that everyone will be talking about, and everything is just moving so much faster, it feels like. What is your piece of advice or word of warning for any founder? It doesn't matter if they're going agency or product or brand or anything else like this. What's your overriding advice for anybody who wants to go down the path of like founding a company and going off on their own?
Mhm. Well, I think there's a few angles on this. Once again, coming back to what you want and what you're building. If you're
Mm,
building a real world experience, which I think is going to pop pretty hard because everyone's going to be really fatigued of all this AI and tech. I already feel it. I already know tons of people who feel it. That's already, a trend and a thing is,
mhm,
really the unplugging side. Maybe you don't need to lean into it. Maybe that's your best friend, is being more analog and being more old school, right?
hmm,
But if you're building a business that is reliant on technology or is currently being disrupted by it, you have to lean in or decide to go play a different game, in my opinion.
mhm,
Obviously, I'm in the camp of, all right, I need to learn as much as I possibly can, use it as much as I can, and experiment with it so I understand. I mean, I'm leading a lot of clients through this transition right now of how they use it the most effectively,
mhm.
right? And what the future of agencies looks like in a post AI world. So, um, yeah, I think you have to know what game you're playing and then really figure out what are the AI skills I need to learn to, survive and thrive.
Man, I think that's really well said because I think it's super easy to get a little get off my yard, right? Especially like on like the agency side of things, right? Because there's a lot of people who are kind of maybe overvaluing their skill set, right? And it's kind of leading towards not even using AI at all and being very resistant to it. Like I don't think it's going away, right? So
No,
like
I
if
mean, once again, the thing I've always said, this is as bad as it's ever going to be.
mhm,
And it already feels like magic.
yeah, that's fair.
And so when you really think about it, how much better is this thing gonna be in a few years, right? And I think once again, it comes back to knowing what's worth working on,
Mm,
um, because when AI can do all of this stuff, if you're working on an important enough problem or providing a solution that AI can't, or you have some edge or some advantage or some data that it doesn't have access to, then you can really build anything you need to support that idea. So it's almost like the idea and the business become the most important thing. Like
huh,
the concept becomes the most important thing because the doing is assumed that okay, we can execute this path because we have this leverage and this tool supporting us.
interesting. Nicholas, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really do appreciate it. If people want to keep up with you, come hang out with you, learn more about what you're doing, take a look at your content, where's the best place for them to come hang out with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably where I'm the most active.
Perfect.
So find me on LinkedIn, Nicholas Kirchner. I believe it's at Kirchner1. And then on Instagram, you can find me at Scale Your Agency.
Mm,
Um, so those are the two places that I would recommend. And then, if you're interested in either side, work with Hydra.com or howlcampfires.com.
awesome. Nicholas, I really think that this will help some people not get too far over their skis in the form of firing up 7 additional businesses when they should be putting their focus on one. But really appreciate you coming in and kind of sharing your path. And I think it's going to help some people out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you as well.
Cheers.